I want you to understand what it means to catch the person you love in the ultimate act of betrayal. My name is Robert Jensen, and I'm 35 years old. I spent 15 years in Delta Force, 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, operations in 7 other countries I can't name. I've survived firefights that should have killed me. I've led men through hell itself. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for walking into my own home at 2 a.m. and finding my wife Rochelle in our bed with a leather-clad biker named Vince Parker. The rage that consumed me in that moment wasn't the controlled anger I'd learned in combat. This was primal. This violation happened in my sanctuary, in the home I'd paid for while deployed in war zones. Vince made a catastrophic mistake when he decided to swing at a Delta Force commander. My wife Rochelle made an even worse mistake thinking I'd simply accept her betrayal and the $23,000 she'd stolen from our joint accounts to fund her boyfriend's lifestyle. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, if you've had your life torn apart by infidelity and lies, then you'll understand what comes next. This is the story of how I took back control, how I made sure every person who wronged me faced real consequences, how I proved that being a good man doesn't mean being a weak man. Some people mistake patience for weakness and loyalty for stupidity. Those people learn painful lessons. But let me start from the beginning. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. I pulled into my driveway at 2 a.m. after 12 hours of straight driving from Fort Bragg. The training rotation had been cut short. Weather conditions made the exercise impossible to continue. Most of the guys were pissed about losing 3 days of training time. Me? I was just thinking about surprising Rochelle, maybe taking her out for breakfast in the morning, spending some actual time together before I had to report back. That's when I noticed the Harley parked near our garage. Custom chrome gleaming under the streetlight, elaborate paint job, the whole 9 yards. I didn't recognize it. Rochelle hadn't mentioned any visitors, and it was 2 a.m., way too late for a social call. My instincts went on high alert immediately. 15 years in Delta Force teaches you to read situations fast. Something was wrong. I killed the engine and stepped out of my truck quietly. The house was dark except for a faint glow coming from upstairs, from our bedroom. I entered through the side door using the tactical silence that had kept me alive in hostile territory for over a decade. No rushed movements, no noise, just smooth progression through my own home like I was clearing a building in Kandahar. The stairs didn't creak. I'd learned which boards to avoid years ago. When I reached our bedroom doorway, I saw exactly what some part of me had already processed the moment I spotted that motorcycle. Rochelle was in our bed with a man I'd never seen before. Massive guy. Maybe 6'4", covered in tattoos, thick beard, leather vest hanging on my bedside chair. They were so wrapped up in each other they didn't even notice me standing there. I flipped on the lights. Rochelle screamed. The biker jumped up, scrambling for his jeans like his life depended on it. I just stood in the doorway, completely calm on the outside while my mind calculated a dozen different ways to end this situation. "Robert," Rochelle gasped, clutching our sheets to her chest. "You're not supposed to be home until Friday," I finished for her. "I know. Surprise." The biker, I'd learn his name was Vince Parker soon enough, had his pants on now and was puffing out his chest like that was supposed to intimidate me. "Who the hell are you?" I almost laughed. "I'm the guy who pays for that bed you were just defiling. I'm the husband. You've got about 30 seconds to get dressed and get out of my house before this gets ugly." Rochelle found her voice then. Instead of apologizing, instead of showing even a shred of remorse, she went on the attack. "You're never here, Robert. I'm alone all the time while you're off playing soldier. What did you expect?" Playing soldier. Those 2 words hit me like a physical blow, but I channeled that hurt straight into cold fury. "I've been defending this country for 15 years, Rochelle. I've missed birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, all so you could sleep safely in that bed. And this is what you do with that safety?" Vince stepped toward me, trying to look threatening. "Look, man, maybe if you took care of your woman properly, she wouldn't need someone else." That was his first mistake, thinking words were going to escalate this. His second mistake came next. He swung at me. I saw it coming from a mile away, a wide, telegraphed right hook that would have gotten him killed in about 15 different countries I've operated in. I sidestepped effortlessly, caught his arm, and used his own momentum to drive him face first into the wall. Before he could process what happened, I had him in a control hold, his arm twisted behind his back at an angle that put him on his tiptoes, gasping in pain. "Let him go!" Rochelle shrieked. "Here's what's going to happen," I said calmly, applying just enough pressure to make Vince whimper. "You're going to get dressed, get on your little motorcycle, and disappear. If I ever see you near my house, near my wife, near anything that belongs to me again, I will make you regret the day you were born. Are we clear? You're breaking my arm, man." "I'm not. But I can if you'd like a demonstration." I applied a fraction more pressure and he yelped. "Are we clear?" Yes, we're clear." I released him. He stumbled toward his clothes, all that bravado completely shattered. He couldn't get dressed fast enough, fumbling with his shirt and boots while Rochelle watched in stunned silence. "Wait," she said as Vince headed for the door. "Vince, don't leave me here with him." Vince didn't even look back. He practically ran down the stairs and out the door. 30 seconds later, I heard his Harley roar to life and fade into the distance. Now it was just Rochelle and me. "How long?" I asked. She wrapped herself in a robe, still defiant. "Does it matter?" "Humor me." 6 months. I met him at a bar in town. He's part of the Iron Riders Motorcycle Club. He treats me like I matter, Robert. He makes me feel alive. He's a biker who saw an easy mark, I said flatly. "Let me guess. You've been giving him money too?" The way her face changed told me everything. He needed help with some things. "How much?" "That's none of your business." "Everything in this house is my business, Rochelle. The mortgage I pay, the car in the garage I bought you, the credit cards in both our names. How?" "Much." She looked away. 20,000. Maybe a little more. I felt my jaw tighten. $20,000. 6 months of lies. And she had the nerve to act like she was the victim here. Do you know what that kind of betrayal does to a person? When someone you've trusted with your entire life decides you're not worth basic honesty? "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice deadly calm. "Tomorrow morning, you're going to pack whatever you can fit in your car. You're going to leave this house, and you're going to find somewhere else to live. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm going to make sure every detail of your affair, including the money you stole from our joint accounts to give to your boyfriend, is documented in the proceedings. You can't just kick me out. Watch me. This is North Carolina. Adultery matters here. You want to lawyer up and fight this? Go ahead. But I've got witnesses now. I've got bank records, and I've got right on my side. You'll end up with nothing. I gave you 8 years of my life, and you threw them away for a biker who couldn't last 30 seconds when confronted by actual danger." I stepped closer, and she actually backed up, fear flickering across her face for the first time. "I've killed men who were more of a threat than your boyfriend, Rochelle. I've led teams through situations that would break most people. And you thought I'd just roll over and accept this?" She started crying then, not out of remorse, but out of rage and frustration that her affair had blown up in her face. "I hate you." "Good," I said. "That'll make the divorce easier." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office, documenting everything with the same methodical precision I'd use planning a mission overseas. I took photos of the bedroom before Rochelle could clean it up. Her phone left on the nightstand, which I photographed but didn't touch, knowing I'd need legal access to records. Vince's forgotten leather gloves on the floor, the unmade bed, everything. Each photo was time-stamped, geotagged, saved to 3 different locations, including a cloud backup Rochelle didn't know existed. Then I went through our bank statements and credit card records, highlighting every suspicious transaction over the past 6 months. You ever notice how patterns emerge when you actually look for them? Cash withdrawals every week, sometimes twice a week. Always odd amounts, 300 here, 500 there. Nothing large enough to trigger my attention when I'd glanced at statements between deployments, but together they painted a damning picture. $23,000 I discovered, not 20. $23,000 of marital funds transferred to Vince Parker, most of it in cash withdrawals that Rochelle had hidden from me. I photographed every single transaction, built a spreadsheet, cross-referenced dates with my deployment schedule. She'd started stealing from us 2 weeks after I'd left for Afghanistan on my last rotation. At 600 hours, I called my commander. Colonel Marcus Brennan had been my CO for 6 years, and he answered on the second ring despite the early hour. "Jensen, what's wrong?" "Sir, I need emergency leave. Family crisis." "How long?" 2 weeks to start. Maybe longer depending on how things develop." "Approved. Take care of whatever you need to take care of, Robert. Your paperwork will be ready by 800. That's the thing about the military. When you've proven yourself for 15 years, when you've bled for your country and led men through hell, your commanders trust you. No questions, no hesitation, just support. Then I called Douglas Whitmore, the best divorce attorney in Fayetteville and a former JAG officer who understood military families. "Robert Jensen," Douglas said when he picked up. "Didn't expect to hear from you. What's going on?" I gave him the brief version. Caught wife with another man. Physical altercation. Marital funds stolen. I need a divorce, and I need it to be fast and brutal. "Come to my office at 0900, Douglas said immediately. "Bring all your documentation. We'll bury her." By 0900, I was sitting across from Douglas in his downtown office, a file folder 3 inches thick on the desk between us. Douglas whistled low as he reviewed my documentation. "You weren't kidding. This is airtight. Bank records, timestamps, photos, the boyfriend's priors. You're going to bury her in discovery alone." "I want her to get nothing," I said flatly. "The house is mine. I bought it before we were married. I want every penny of the marital funds she stole recovered, and I want this done fast." "North Carolina requires a year of separation before divorce," Douglas cautioned. "But we can file immediately based on adultery, which affects alimony and property division. With this evidence, she won't get a dime in spousal support. As for the money she gave to her boyfriend," he smiled grimly, "we can pursue that as dissipation of marital assets. She'll have to pay you back." "Good. Do it." "There's one more thing," Douglas said. "The boyfriend. Vince Parker, you said? What do you know about him?" "Just that he's Iron Riders Motorcycle Club and he's got priors." "Why?" "Because guys like that don't take rejection well. If he's been bleeding your wife for money and now that revenue stream is ending, he might cause problems. Be careful." I almost laughed. "Douglas, I've dealt with insurgents, warlords, and terrorists. I think I can handle one pissed-off biker." "I'm sure you can. Just do it legally this time." By the time I got home at 1100, Rochelle was gone. She'd taken her clothes, some photos, and, oddly, the coffee maker. Fine. I didn't drink enough coffee to justify a fancy machine anyway. She'd left the wedding album on the kitchen counter, though, a petty little statement that wasn't as hurtful as she probably hoped. I threw it in the trash and called a locksmith. 3 days later, I was in the garage working on my truck when 2 motorcycles pulled into my driveway. I grabbed a shop rag, wiped my hands, and stepped out to meet them. They killed their engines and climbed off their bikes, swagger in every step. "You Jensen?" the first one asked. Big guy, older, with gray in his beard. His patch said Sergeant at Arms. "That's right. Can I help you?" "I'm Gerald Hansen. This is Todd McKinley. We're here on behalf of our brother, Vince. You put your hands on him the other night. Your brother was in my house, in my bed, with my wife. I showed remarkable restraint. Vince says you threatened him. I told him to leave and never come back. That's not a threat. That's a boundary." I crossed my arms, relaxed but ready. "Is there a point to this visit?" Todd stepped forward, trying to crowd me. "The point is, you disrespected the Iron Riders. That doesn't fly around here." "And sleeping with another man's wife flies?" Gerald held up a hand, trying to play peacemaker. "Look, we get it. You're pissed, but Vince is our brother, and we take care of our own. He wants an apology. Then he's going to be disappointed. You don't want to make enemies of us," Todd said, stepping even closer. I looked at both of them, these weekend warriors with their leather and their bikes and their club patches, and I almost felt sorry for them. They had no idea who they were dealing with. "Let me make something very clear," I said, my voice dropping into the command tone I used with my unit. "I don't care about your club. I don't care about your brotherhood. Your boy Vince made a choice to involve himself with my wife, to come into my home, and to swing at me when he got caught. Those are his consequences to live with, not mine. You need to show some respect." "Respect?" I cut Todd off. "You want to see my resume? 15 years Delta Force, 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, operations in 7 other countries I can't name. I've been in more firefights than you've had birthdays, and I've put down men who were actually dangerous. So when I tell you that you don't want to escalate this situation, I'm not being dramatic. I'm being professional." The look on their faces shifted. Gerald's eyes narrowed. "You're Delta?" "Was. Still am, technically. On leave dealing with personal matters. But I can make a call right now and have half my unit here in an hour if you really want to press this." That was a bluff. Sort of. My unit wouldn't come running for a pissing match with a motorcycle club. But these guys didn't know that. Gerald held up both hands. All right, man. We're just here to talk. No need for threats. Then we're done talking. Tell Vince to move on with his life. Tell him if he or any of his club brothers come near me, my property, or my soon-to-be ex-wife again, I'll make it a legal problem for all of you. And trust me, I document everything. They climbed back on their bikes without another word. Gerald gave me a long look before he started his engine, something between respect and wariness. They rode off, and I watched until they disappeared around the corner. But I knew it wasn't over. Guys like Vince didn't take humiliation well, and the Iron Riders had a reputation in Fayetteville for being territorial and proud. I'd embarrass them, and that meant they'd either escalate or back off completely. I was betting on escalation. That evening, I drove to the home security store and spent $2,000 on a comprehensive camera system. 4 exterior cameras, motion-activated lights, and a digital recording system that backed up to the cloud. I spent the next 3 hours installing everything myself. Camera 1 covered the front door and driveway. Camera 2 watched the back door. 3 and 4 covered the side entrances and the garage. When I finished, I tested each one from my phone, watching the live feeds cycle through. Crystal clear, night vision capable, motion-triggered alerts sent directly to my device. Then I sat down at my computer and documented everything. The Iron Riders visit, Gerald Hansen's name and patch, Todd McKinley's attempt at intimidation, the veiled threats, my response, the security system installation, and why I'd felt it necessary. I sent it all to Douglas in a detailed email with the subject line, Documentation, Iron Riders MC contact, 1500 hours today. He responded within 10 minutes. Good work. Keep documenting everything. If they show up again, call the police immediately. We'll use this if we need restraining orders. I leaned back in my chair, looking at the security camera feeds on my monitor. 4 different angles of my property, all recording continuously. Whatever came next, I'd be ready. Monday morning arrived 4 days after the Iron Riders visit, and I was at the gym on base running through my usual routine: bench press, squats, deadlifts. The familiar burn in my muscles helped clear my head, gave me something to focus on besides the wreckage of my marriage. That's when my phone started exploding. I finished my set and checked the screen. 5 missed calls from Rochelle, then 6, 7. By the time I'd moved to the squat rack, it was up to 10. I ignored them all. Whatever she had to say could wait until I finished my workout. The voicemails started coming in. I didn't listen to them, but I could see them stacking up in my notifications. Desperate, probably, maybe angry. I didn't care which. Douglas had filed the divorce papers on Friday, which meant Rochelle had been officially served this morning. She was just now realizing exactly what she was facing. By the time I finished my cool-down and hit the showers, I had 15 missed calls. 15, all from Rochelle, all within 2 hours. I dried off, got dressed, and finally answered when she called for the 16th time. What? You're suing me for $23,000? Her voice was shrill, panicked. Robert, this is insane. You can't do this. Dissipation of marital assets, I said calmly, walking out to my truck. You stole from our joint accounts to give to your boyfriend. Yeah, I'm suing you for that, plus legal fees. That money was mine too. That money was ours, and you used it for an affair. North Carolina law is very clear on this, Rochelle. You're going to pay it back, plus my legal fees, plus interest. I don't have that kind of money. She was crying now, the ugly kind of crying that used to make me want to comfort her. Now it just made me tired. Then you should have thought about that before you decided to fund Vince's lifestyle. Not my problem anymore. Robert, please. Her voice shifted, became softer, more desperate. Can't we work this out? Go to counseling or something? I made a mistake. You made a choice. I cut her off. Multiple choices. Every single time you met him, every time you lied to me, every time you transferred money to him. Those were all choices, Rochelle. You chose this, and now you get to live with the consequences. I was lonely. You were never here. I was serving my country. That's what you signed up for when you married a soldier. But instead of talking to me, instead of going to counseling, instead of doing anything productive with your loneliness, you chose to cheat and steal. Those are your decisions to own. You're destroying my life. No, I said, my voice going cold. You destroyed your own life. I'm just making sure you pay for it. I hung up. She tried calling back immediately, but I was already blocking her number. That afternoon, I was going through paperwork at home when my phone rang again. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Jensen. It was Vince. I recognized his voice immediately. We need to talk. No, we don't. Rochelle's broke because of you. She can't afford a place to stay. She's living in her car, man. I actually laughed. And whose fault is that, Vince? Maybe if you hadn't bled her dry for 6 months, she'd have some savings left. I didn't take her money. She gave it to me. Same difference. And now she's broke and facing a lawsuit. Actions have consequences. You're a real piece of work, you know that? Says the guy who was sleeping with another man's wife, I shot back. You want to lecture me about morality? About being a real piece of work? You're hilarious. She loves me. She loved my credit cards. There's a difference. I leaned back in my chair, enjoying this more than I probably should. Tell me something, Vince. Now that the money's dried up, how long until you dump her? A week? 2? Silence on the other end. That's what I thought. You're done here. Move on. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Unless you want me to document this call as harassment and add it to my divorce file. Your choice. He hung up. I immediately opened my email and forwarded the call log to Douglas with a note. Document this. Potential harassment from wife's affair partner. Then I blocked Vince's number too. 2 weeks after Douglas got the restraining order approved, I was lying in bed at 200 on a Tuesday, wide awake. Old habits from 15 years of deployments. My body clock never fully adjusted back to civilian sleep patterns. I'd learned to work with it instead of fighting it. That's when I heard it. Someone testing my back door. Not knocking. Not the sound of the lock being picked. The actual door itself, like someone was checking how solid it was, whether it would give under pressure. I rolled out of bed silently, muscle memory taking over. Opened the nightstand safe, pulled out my Glock, checked the chamber, moved to the hallway, staying low and quiet. Pulling up the security app on my phone, I saw him immediately. Vince Parker, dressed in dark clothes, wearing a black hoodie, using a crowbar to jimmy the lock on my back door, breaking and entering, property damage, violation of a protective order. He'd just handed me everything I needed. I tapped 911 on my phone, kept my voice low. This is Robert Jensen at 447 Pinehurst Drive. I have an active break-in in progress. Suspect is attempting to force entry through my back door. I have him on security camera. I'm armed and inside the residence. Stay on the line, sir, the dispatcher said. Units are en route. Do not engage if you can safely avoid it. Understood. I moved to the window, staying out of sight, watching Vince work the crowbar. He wasn't good at this. Took him almost 3 minutes to get the door frame to crack enough that the lock gave way. That's when I heard the sirens. Distant, maybe 8 blocks out, but getting closer. Vince heard them too. He froze, crowbar still in hand, his head snapping up like a deer that just caught wind of a predator. He bolted. I was already moving. Burst out my front door and cut across the lawn, angling toward his motorcycle parked 4 houses down. He saw me coming and made his third catastrophic decision of the night. He charged me. This time, I didn't go easy on him. I sidestepped his wild swing, drove my knee straight into his gut, felt all the air leave his lungs in one explosive gasp. Used a basic combat takedown that put him face first on my lawn before he could even process what happened. Within seconds, I had him locked down. Compliance hold, his arm twisted behind his back at an angle that had him whimpering, my knee planted firmly between his shoulder blades. Don't move, I said calmly. The dispatcher was still on the line, hearing everything. Police are about 30 seconds out. Get off me. He was struggling, which just made the hold more painful for him. Not a chance. You broke into my house, Vince. You violated a restraining order. You're done. The patrol cars arrived in a flood of lights and sirens. 3 cruisers, 6 officers total, all business. I stayed exactly where I was, one hand controlling Vince, the other holding my phone up so they could see I was the homeowner. Robert Jensen, I called out as officers approached with weapons drawn. I'm the homeowner. I'm armed, but my weapon is holstered. This is the suspect. I have security footage of the break-in on my phone. Sergeant Marcus Tolliver, the senior officer, recognized me from the Iron Riders incident report. Mr. Jensen, you can release him. We've got this. I let Vince go and stepped back, hands visible. 2 officers immediately moved in, cuffing Vince while reading him his rights. Marcus came over, and I pulled up the security footage on my phone, showed him Vince approaching the back door, using the crowbar, forcing entry, then fleeing when he heard sirens. That's breaking and entering, attempted burglary, Violation of a protective order and criminal trespassing, Marcus said, shaking his head. This guy really doesn't learn, does he? Apparently not. They hauled Vince to his feet, walked him toward one of the patrol cars. As they stuffed him in the back seat, he looked at me with pure hatred burning in his eyes. This isn't over, he spat out. Marcus slammed the door, cutting off whatever else Vince was going to say. The other officers took photos of my damaged back door, collected the crowbar as evidence, got my statement. As the first two patrol cars pulled away with Vince, Marcus stayed behind to finish the paperwork. Actually, I said, watching the taillights disappear down the street, it really is over this time. Marcus glanced at me, then at the security camera pointed at my back door, then back at me. Yeah, he agreed. I think you're right. The knock on my door came at 0900 hours the next morning. I'd been up since 0500, running through the timeline of Vince's arrest with Douglas over the phone. The charges were solid. The security footage was irrefutable. Vince was looking at serious prison time, and his bail had been set high enough that he was staying locked up until trial. But when I opened the door and saw Dustin Harrison standing on my porch, wearing his Iron Rider's vest with the presidential patches but with both hands visible and his posture completely non-threatening, I'll admit I was curious. Mr. Jensen, he said, I'm Dustin Harrison, president of the Iron Riders. Can I have 5 minutes of your time? You've got 2. He nodded, accepting that without argument. Vince Parker is no longer a member of our club. We voted him out this morning. What he did, the affair, taking money from your wife, and especially trying to break into your home. That's not who we are. We're a motorcycle club, not criminals. I studied him. He seemed genuine, and the fact that they'd expelled Vince less than 12 hours after his arrest said something about their priorities. Okay, I'm here to apologize on behalf of the club and to assure you that you won't have any more trouble from us. Vince acted alone, and he's facing the consequences alone. Appreciated. Apology accepted. One more thing. Dustin pulled out a folded paper from inside his vest. This is a signed statement from me and the club's board. It documents that Vince was expelled for conduct unbecoming, that the club had no knowledge of his activities with your wife, and that we don't support or condone what he did. Your lawyer might find it useful. I took the paper, genuinely surprised, unfolded it, and scanned the contents. It was exactly what he said. An official club document on Iron Rider's letterhead, signed by Dustin and 4 other board members, explicitly disavowing Vince and his actions. Thank you, I said. This actually helps a lot. We're not looking for trouble, Mr. Jensen. We ride, we support local charities, we have families. Vince was supposed to be a brother, but he violated the code. He's on his own now. After Dustin left, I immediately called Douglas and photographed the statement to send it over. This is gold, Douglas said the moment he finished reading it. This completely isolates Vince and Rochelle. No club backing, no community support. They're alone in this, Robert. Completely alone. Good. I'm accelerating the divorce proceedings. With this statement, the security footage, the bank records, the arrest, Rochelle's attorney doesn't have a leg to stand on. We're going to bury her. Over the next several weeks, I watched Douglas work like a surgical strike team. Every court filing was devastating. Every piece of evidence was documented and cross-referenced. Every legal argument was airtight. Rochelle's attorney, some overworked public defender who'd probably taken her case thinking it would be a straightforward settlement, was completely outmatched. Douglas steamrolled every objection, countered every argument, and presented such overwhelming evidence that even Rochelle's lawyer seemed to be losing faith in his own client. I sat in my living room one evening reviewing Douglas's latest court filings. The divorce hearing was scheduled for next week. Everything was lined up perfectly. The adultery evidence, the financial theft documentation, the restraining order violations, Vince's arrest, the Iron Rider's disavowal. Rochelle and Vince were completely isolated now. No friends, no support, no community standing behind them. Just 2 people who'd made catastrophically bad choices, now facing the full weight of their consequences. And honestly, that's exactly what justice looked like. The Fayetteville courthouse was built in the 70s, all concrete and brown brick, with those narrow windows that made every room feel like a bunker. I'd been in worse places, but walking through those doors with Douglas at 0830 hours, carrying 3 file folders stuffed with documentation, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was it, the final assault. Remember, Douglas said as we rode the elevator to the 3rd floor, let me do the talking. You're here to be present, to answer questions if asked, but mostly to watch her world fall apart. I can do that. Judge Jennifer Sanders's courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Rochelle was already seated at the defendant's table with her attorney, a tired-looking public defender named Michael Torres, who couldn't have been more than 30. He had that overwhelmed expression I'd seen on young lieutenants who just realized they were outgunned and outmaneuvered. Rochelle didn't look at me when we entered. She kept her eyes down, hands folded in her lap, wearing a conservative dress that was probably borrowed. Trying to look sympathetic, I guessed. Trying to look like the victim. Judge Sanders entered at 0900 sharp. She was in her 60s, gray hair pulled back tight, with the kind of no-nonsense expression that said she'd seen every sob story and every excuse 1,000 times before. "This is the matter of Jensen versus Jensen," she said, settling into her chair. "Petitioner seeks dissolution of marriage based on adultery and requests recovery of dissipated marital assets. Mr. Whitmore, you may proceed." Douglas stood, and for the next 40 minutes, I watched him systematically dismantle Rochelle's life. He presented the bank records first, highlighting every transfer, every cash withdrawal, every dollar that had disappeared into Vince's pockets. Then came the security footage from the night I'd caught them, not the bedroom, but the hallway camera showing Vince leaving in a panic. Then the witness statements, the Iron Rider's official disavowal letter, the police reports from Vince's break-in attempt. Torres tried. I'll give him that. When Douglas finished, Torres stood and made his pitch. "Your Honor, Mrs. Jensen was a devoted wife for 8 years. She supported her husband through multiple deployments, through long absences, through the strain that military life puts on any marriage. She made a mistake, a serious mistake, but she deserves consideration. Mr. Jensen's career created hardships that—" "Mr. Torres," Judge Sanders interrupted, flipping through the evidence Douglas had submitted. "Are you seriously suggesting that military service justifies adultery?" "No, Your Honor. I'm suggesting that loneliness and— I've reviewed the financial records. Your client didn't just commit adultery. She systematically drained marital accounts to fund her affair partner's lifestyle. $23,000 over 6 months. That's not a mistake. That's theft." Torres's shoulders sagged. "Your Honor, Mrs. Jensen is willing to make restitution over time. She doesn't get to decide that. I do." Judge Sanders turned her attention to Rochelle, and I saw Rochelle shrink under that gaze. "Mrs. Jensen, stand up." Rochelle stood slowly, her hands shaking. "I've reviewed all the evidence in this case," Judge Sanders said, her voice hard as concrete. "Your conduct was reprehensible. Not only did you engage in adultery, but you also dissipated marital assets to support your affair partner. You've shown no remorse, only self-pity. Your Honor, I was lonely. I don't care." The words cracked like a whip, and Rochelle flinched. "Loneliness doesn't justify betrayal or theft. Plenty of military spouses manage to remain faithful while their partners serve this country. You chose not to." I watched Rochelle's face crumble, watched the reality of her situation finally break through whatever delusion she'd been living in. "I'm granting Mr. Jensen's petition for divorce," Judge Sanders continued. "No alimony will be awarded, Mrs. Jensen. You are ordered to repay the sum of $23,000 in dissipated marital assets, plus Mr. Jensen's legal fees, which currently total $8,000. You have 6 months to begin payments, or we'll garnish your wages. Do you understand?" Rochelle collapsed back into her chair, sobbing. Torres put a hand on her shoulder, looking defeated. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, no triumph, just emptiness. 3 months later, I sat in a different courtroom for Vince's criminal trial. The jury deliberated for less than an hour, guilty on all counts. Judge Daniel Clarkson sentenced Vince to 3 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 18 months. But before the bailiffs took Vince away, the judge leaned forward. "Mr. Parker, you made a series of catastrophically poor decisions. You involved yourself in an extramarital affair, you took money from a married woman, and when her husband discovered your activities, you attempted to burglarize his home. You showed no remorse, no accountability, and no respect for the law." Vince didn't look at me as they led him away in handcuffs. Rochelle wasn't in the gallery this time. I walked out of that courthouse into the afternoon sun, and for the first time in 6 months, I felt like I could breathe. 6 months after Rochelle moved out, I'd finally started to feel like myself again. I'd sold the old house, couldn't walk through those rooms without seeing her betrayal in every corner, and bought a smaller place about 15 minutes from Fort Bragg. 2 bedrooms, decent yard, no memories. I was painting the kitchen when my phone rang. Douglas, middle of a Tuesday afternoon. "Robert, We have a problem. Rochelle filed for bankruptcy. The paintbrush stopped halfway to the wall. What does that mean for the judgment? It means the $23,000 she owes you might be discharged. Bankruptcy court can wipe out civil judgments like this. I'm filing an objection, arguing that debts incurred through fraud or willful injury shouldn't be dischargeable, but it's not guaranteed. I set the brush down carefully, forcing myself to stay calm. So she might get away with stealing from me? I'm gonna fight it. But yeah, there's a chance. After we hung up, I stood there in my half-painted kitchen, feeling that familiar rage building in my chest. After everything, the divorce, the court battles, Vince in prison, she might still escape consequences. No, I wasn't going to let that happen. I called Douglas back within the hour. Set up a meeting. I'm bringing in Kenneth Roberts. Kenneth was a forensic accountant I'd worked with on some fraud investigations during my time at Fort Bragg. Sharp guy, meticulous, completely unforgiving when it came to financial deception. More importantly, he owed me. I'd written a recommendation letter for his son's West Point application last year. The kid got in, and Kenneth had told me he'd return the favor someday. Someday was now. 3 days later, we met in Douglas's office. Kenneth spread out the bank records I'd already collected, along with subpoenaed documents Douglas had pulled through discovery. You need to prove this debt shouldn't be dischargeable in bankruptcy, Douglas explained to Kenneth. That means showing it was incurred through actual fraud or willful and malicious injury. Kenneth cracked his knuckles. Let me see everything. Over the next 2 weeks, Kenneth tore through every transaction Rochelle had made during our marriage. He tracked cash withdrawals, credit card statements, transfers between accounts. The man was relentless. What he found was even worse than I'd thought. This isn't just marital discord, Kenneth said when we met again. He pointed to a spreadsheet he'd created, color-coded and annotated. She didn't just make withdrawals. She opened a credit card in her name only, used your home address, listed herself as married but never told you about it. She what? Maxed it out. $15,000 limit, every penny went to cash advances that match up with her other transfers to Vince. Then she paid the minimum payments from your joint account, burying them in regular expenses so you wouldn't notice. Douglas leaned forward. That's fraud. Clear-cut fraud. Systematic fraud, Kenneth corrected. This wasn't emotional spending or poor judgment. This was calculated deception over months. She concealed assets, misrepresented her financial activities, and did it with intent to harm Robert financially while enriching her affair partner. I felt something cold settle in my gut. Not anger this time. Satisfaction. She'd just handed me everything I needed. Bankruptcy court felt different from divorce court. Smaller, more bureaucratic. The trustee, Angela Wright, was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who reviewed Kenneth's findings with the focus of someone who'd seen every trick in the book. Douglas presented Kenneth's evidence with surgical precision. The secret credit card, the systematic concealment, the pattern of deception that went far beyond simple adultery. Rochelle's bankruptcy attorney, some overworked guy named Martinez who clearly had 50 other cases, tried to argue that she'd been emotionally distressed, that she hadn't meant to commit fraud, that she deserved a fresh start. Angela Wright shut him down before he finished his second sentence. Your client engaged in systematic financial deception, she said flatly. This wasn't a mistake or poor judgment. This was calculated fraud. I'm recommending the debt remain in place and be declared non-dischargeable. The bankruptcy judge, an older man named Harper, reviewed Angela's recommendation and Kenneth's forensic analysis. It took him about 10 minutes. The court agrees with the trustee's recommendation. The debt owed to Robert Jensen is non-dischargeable. Mrs. Jensen will repay the full amount of $31,000, $23,000 in marital assets, $8,000 in divorce legal fees, plus interest accrued since the divorce judgment, plus legal fees from these bankruptcy proceedings. Total amount due, $37,400. Rochelle's face went white. In the courthouse hallway afterward, she caught up to me, her voice shrill and desperate. You're destroying my life! I stopped, turned to face her, kept my voice level, calm. No, you destroyed your own life. I'm just making sure you pay for it. Then I walked away without looking back. 8 months after I'd caught Rochelle with Vince, I found myself in the VA hospital waiting room for a routine checkup. I'd arrived early, old habit from the military, and was scrolling through my phone when a woman in scrubs sat down across from me. You're early too, she said, smiling. Or you're really patient. I looked up. She had dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, warm brown eyes, and the kind of genuine smile that actually reached those eyes. Her name tag read Emily Garcia, RN. Early, I admitted. 12 years of formations will do that to you. Military? Delta Force, 15 years. You? My brother's a Marine. Third deployment right now, actually. She glanced at her watch. I'm on break. You mind if I sit here? The break room's packed. Go ahead. We ended up talking for an hour. She missed her appointment break entirely, but didn't seem to care. We talked about military life, about the strain deployments put on families, about the things civilians never quite understood. She got it, really got it, in a way Rochelle never had. You said was Delta Force, Emily pointed out. Past tense? Transitioning to a training role now. Fewer deployments, more time at home. I'm done with the overseas part. That must be an adjustment. It is. I met her eyes. But it's time. I've done my part over there. Now I want to build something here. She smiled again, and something in my chest loosened just slightly. We started dating casually after that. Coffee at first, then dinner, then weekends. Emily was different from Rochelle in every way that mattered. She was honest, brutally so sometimes, direct, self-sufficient. She had her own career, her own life, her own everything. She never asked me for money, never complained when I had late training sessions, never made me feel guilty for the career I'd chosen. She just asked for my time and my attention. That was it. 3 months in, we met for dinner at a small Italian place near base. She had that look on her face, the one that meant she'd been thinking about something serious. I need to tell you something, she said. My guard went up immediately. I'd heard those words before. Okay? I know about your divorce. I looked you up online. I'm sorry, I know that's invasive, but I needed to know what I was getting into. She reached across the table and took my hand. And I just want you to know that I'm not her. I'm not going to betray you or use you or make you question whether you can trust me. If we're going to do this, I want you to know that you're safe with me. I'd spent 8 months building walls, thick ones, the kind designed to keep everyone out, to protect myself from ever feeling that gut punch of betrayal again. But looking at Emily across that table, hearing those words, I felt those walls start to crack. Thank you, I said quietly. That means more than you know. A year after the divorce finalized, I ran into Rochelle at a grocery store. I was grabbing milk when I saw her in the frozen foods aisle. She looked terrible, thinner than I remembered, older somehow, like life had worn her down to nothing. She was with some guy I didn't recognize, someone who looked just as beaten down as she did. She saw me, froze, then tried to turn her cart around and disappear. Rochelle, she stopped, her shoulders hunching like I'd physically struck her. Robert, how are the payments going? Her face flushed red. I'm paying them, $50 a month. It's all I can afford. I did the math in my head. At that rate, you'll be paying me back for the next 30 years. I know, her voice cracked. Are you happy now? You've destroyed my life. I lost my job because of the bankruptcy. I'm barely scraping by. Vince is in prison. I'm alone and broke. Is this what you wanted? I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, not even pity. Just emptiness, where she used to be. I wanted you to face consequences for your actions, I said simply. And you have. What you do with the rest of your life is up to you. I walked away, leaving her standing there in the frozen foods aisle. 2 years after the divorce, my life looks nothing like it did that night at 0200 hours. I'm still with Emily. We moved in together 6 months ago. Last week, I bought a ring. I'm proposing next month on her birthday, and I'm not scared. She's proven herself 1,000 times over. I trust her completely. My career transitioned smoothly. I'm a senior instructor at Fort Bragg now, training the next generation of special operations soldiers. No more deployments, no more months away from home. Rochelle's still working minimum wage somewhere, still making those $50 payments. Vince got out of prison 6 months ago, violated parole immediately, and went right back inside for another 2 years. The Iron Riders kept Dustin's word. They invited me to their annual charity ride last year. I went with Emily. Turns out most of them are decent guys who just like motorcycles. That night, Emily asked me if I had any regrets about how I'd handled everything. Not a single one, I told her honestly. I gave Rochelle 8 years of loyalty. She threw it away. When I found out, I fought back, and I made sure there were consequences. That's not revenge, Emily said. That's justice. Maybe it's both, I admitted. But I'm okay with that, because I defended my home with the same precision and ruthlessness I'd use on any mission, and I won. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.